And now let's hear from global experts exploring the richness of grassroots innovations, sharing concrete examples and stories contributing to decent work, and addressing needs unmet by policies and market access.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today on grassroots local innovation to accelerate action as part of the Sustainable Development Goal Action Zone. My name is Gina Lucarelli. I'm the team leader of the UN Development Program Accelerator Lab Network. This is a network of explorers and solutions mappers and experimenters, at the moment covering 78 countries globally and expanding soon in the next month or so to cover 114 countries. What we do within this Accelerator Lab network at UNDP is we try and tap into the distributed knowledge and perception and practices of women and men who are facing the effects of climate change, who are living in poverty, and who have a lot to contribute to putting the planet on a more sustainable path. Today, we have a fantastic panel with us to explore just what it means to tap into grassroots innovations as part of accelerating action towards sustainable development. Let me now introduce our panel so that we can see who we're talking to. We're really grateful to have with us Fatima Farouta, who is the head of solutions mapping at UNDP Ghana. We also have Rex Lohr, who is the head of solutions mapping at UNDP Philippines. We're also grateful to be joined by Mahasin Ismail. She is a business studies senior, and she's also the founder of Saunders Homestay. And lastly, we have with us Professor Anil Gupta, who is the founder of the Honeybee Network, our partner working with us on embedding this practice of learning to see and work with and build upon grassroots innovations as part of sustainable development. So let's go to you first, Professor. Tell us a little bit about what grassroots innovations are and why they matter for sustainable development.
Yes, because when there are problems all around us, many people tend to adjust and adapt to them. But there are some people who are impatient with inertia. They try to solve them, sometimes optimally, sometimes suboptimally, but they try to use local resources, local knowledge, local conditions in which their problems have arisen and try to solve them. So when solutions emerge from grassroots, from community level, we call them grassroots innovations. So distinction is between innovations for grassroots and innovation from grassroots. Innovation from grassroots is by farmers, artisans, mechanics, street vendor, a roadside mechanic, anyone who is on the ground trying to eke out their livelihood by working with their hands and working at the local level. Innovation for the grassroots can be by a professional, can be by a professor, can be by an entrepreneur, can be by somebody else, a student for that matter. And these innovations, essentially, the grassroots innovations are a response to a need which has remained unmet. So we must recognize that every grassroots innovation is an indicator of an unmet need. And in that sense, policymakers get a signal from grassroots innovations that these are the needs unmet, and we need to modulate our policies to be able to meet them. Now, if they can do that by scaling up that innovation, that is ideal. But if they want to create some other alternatives, that is also possible. So innovations serve many purposes. They serve a purpose of indicating what are the unmet needs. They serve a purpose of finding out solutions by which same problem could have been solved by many people in different ways. And they also serve a purpose by giving an indication that there is a spirit at the local level by which people don't live with inertia, try to solve it. Now, the question that arises then is, how do these innovations emerge in different contexts? What are the provocations for that? And how do people try to solve problems with very limited means? So sometimes they're also called as frugal innovation. But please remember, it's not just frugality for the consumer, it is also frugality for the environment in most of the cases, not in all cases. Not all grassroots innovations are sustainable, but large number of them are, majority of them are. Let's take an example. If when we were talking about, we have been doing learning walks in different parts of the country for the last 20 years or so. So in one of the walks, Shodhyatra as we call them, I found there was a farmer who was listening to me as to why we should try to control pest without using pesticide, chemical pesticide. After listening to me for some time, he summarized it in one line. He said, you are saying that all the plants which are not eaten by the cattle are potential source of pesticide. Why don't cattle eat them? Because they are bitter. What do I need for controlling pest? Bitterness. Why do I buy? So sometimes the grassroots innovations also have an underlying principle, a heuristic, a thumb rule, which can be generalized. So in another country, using the same rule, a farmer can find out which are the plants which animals don't eat and develop their own pesticide. So they don't have to use the same plant for the same pest as was done in India. So one must recognize that for policymakers, grassroots innovation should not always be seen as an artifactual analogy. That means they should not be seen only as a specific solution. The principles underlying the innovation should also be seen as possible learning opportunity for scaling up that solution. Now, what do we do in India? How did we connect the grassroots innovations with the policy-making system?
Professor, sorry, before you go there, we're going to get to that in part 2. Right now, I just want you to reflect for us on why grassroots innovations matter for sustainable development, how they help us accelerate action towards the sustainable development goals, which we're trying to reach in the next 10 years. We've got a decade of action on our hands.
Yes. We must remember that because grassroots innovations emerge in a very materially constrained environment, they tend to be frugal, they tend to be based on local materials, and they tend to be so many times so easy to manage that local communities can copy them or can use them very easily. Now, given that context, we want to have a decentralized, diversified solution for sustainability. Sustainability has 3 parameters here. We must have solutions which are sustainable. We must have solutions which are inclusive. That means they include the poor people. And we also want solutions which are frugal. That means they're affordable. Now, when affordability is there, naturally, because people who have been materially constrained have developed them, their solutions are likely to be more affordable. They are also likely to be more frugal. But when it comes to sustainability, we should remember that many times the solutions involve materials which may or may not be sustainable. Let us take the case of a dynamite, using dynamite to catch fish. Now, this kills small fish and big fish both. That's not sustainable. But if I use some plant by which the fish become numb and then I can catch them, that is sustainable. So we must remember that sustainability is a criteria by which we can discriminate between green innovations, innovations which are environment friendly, and the innovations which may not be environment friendly. So I'm not trying to say that all solutions that grassroots communities develop are sustainable. We should be using our judgment in deciding which ones are sustainable, and therefore they need to be scaled up. Let me give another example. We all know that many innovations emerge also because there is a lot of drudgery in the life of particularly women. Now, let us take the case of women pulling the water from a well. Many times when they pull the water, the bucket used to fall in the well. And sometimes it causes accidents. What did one innovator, Amrit Bhai, do? He put a small lever. So when you get tired of pulling the bucket, just leave the rope. The lever will press against the rope and hold it in where it is there. So that way you can gasp for the breath, gather your wits, and then when you have refreshed yourself, start pulling it again. So it was a very simple innovation. For 2000 years, we could not prevent buckets from falling in the well. We developed a bunch of hooks to take the bucket out of the well, but we could not prevent falling. This one innovation helped in overcoming the inertia of 2000 years. So there are innovations which sometimes disrupt the practices of millennia. And we must therefore recognize that this is a power which we must unleash through various ecosystem parameters. What are the ecosystem parameters? We should obviously try to look at innovations that can be scaled up, but sometimes there are problems which are niche-based. So we have a case for innovations that are niche-based and also the innovations which can be generalized to a large number of people. I can give you another example. We have many times problems of in situ value addition. Farmers grow crops, farmers grow fruits and vegetables, but they can't process them. So one of the innovators developed a processing machine which did not crush the seeds. If you have taken orange juice, you know that when the seeds of the orange get crushed, the juice becomes bitter. But in this case, the seeds were separated and the juice was separated. And then from the seed, you could even extract essential oil. So there are multi-purpose solutions. Most grassroots innovations tend to be multifunctional. That means they try to solve many problems, not just
I think
one.
that's key. Absolutely. And I think that's
in the consumers, we can afford many solutions for different problems. But grassroots innovators, communities need one solution which solves many problems. So that's another. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's key when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals, because we know these are a set of goals the government's agreed to in 2015. But they're not the kinds of things that you can achieve one by one, right? If you get universal education and you eliminate non-communicable diseases, you still need to achieve gender equality. And these things are much more connected than separate targets, as we understood results and development goals in the past. So I think this what you're saying about grassroots innovation, that it's about the frugality, and it's already integrated. It's not like you need a bunch of policy experts to integrate it. It's already integrated. Let me shift now to hearing from Fatima. Tell us a little bit about the kinds of grassroots innovations that you've been finding in Ghana and why you think they matter for sustainable development.
Thank you, Gina. The UNDP Accelerator Lab here in Ghana started out with a focus on waste management and recycling. And initially, we approached it from the standpoint of the wealthy, the educated, the multinationals amongst us would be the ones who were more engaged in recycling. And going out into the field, coming off boot camp and everything, and realizing that we didn't have the answers, we went out of ourselves. And that's part of what it means to be a solutions mapper, to sort of leave your body behind, so to speak, step out of your experiences, go out there with with humility and a willingness to listen and to learn. And we were flummoxed by the solutions that we found out there. These were people who lived in sort of slum areas, low income, crowded housing. We found that they were actually recycling. They saw value in waste in ways that most of us didn't realize it. And so I dubbed them the innovators, because innovation doesn't just happen in, shiny labs and Silicon Valley and all that. For us, as part of the UNDP Accelerator Lab, we recognize that innovation occurs all around us. Like Professor Gupta says, innovation's happening in villages, in farming communities. And so we found a group of innovators, about 50 of them, creating value out of the waste that they saw. One of them actually employs over 30 women, Ibrahim. And they're engaged in crushing and pelletizing, in a network of waste collectors supply them with all the waste that they gather from around the city. So they're not just eking out a living, but they're also getting litter of the streets, out of the drains, out of dump sites, out of landfills, out of the ocean, right? They're working with formal enterprises to supply them with the plastic that they need to create more upcycling products. And then to cap it all off, we find that they're innovating. They're thinking of ways to mix the waste from plastic products, from upcycled products, mix them up with a bit of sand, a bit of sawdust, to create what one of them is calling plastic wood. So he's in talks with the city authorities to supply a pilot system where they supply schools in the city with this sort of plastic wood. So tables and chairs for the public school system from these recycled woods. And it's been really phenomenal finding these, pockets of innovation in places that hitherto were off the radar, were not considered at all by any of us. And it's been a real eye-opener. I must say. And just like you said, it's not just about taking litter off the streets, right? But it's also about the environment. If we're taking these plastics out of the environment, out of the ocean, we're also contributing to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
This is fascinating because I think it really, as you say, kind of flips our assumptions on their head. And sometimes we imagine development as, stronger economies, more educated societies, and then it's time for the environment. And here, the innovators that you've been working with are already from the start building in the sustainability factor as they make a living. So it's very exciting to hear about. We're really graced to have with us today as well Mahasin Ismail, who I introduced at the start of the call. Mahasin, you are, as I understand it, a real live grassroots innovator who we at the UN Development Program are so thrilled to be inspired by. I understand that you attended the UNDP Sudan Solutions Fair, where you connected with other innovators, and I understand that you're now working with UNDP to build upon your own innovation. Can you tell us a little bit about Saunders Homestay?
So my story with Saunders Homestay project started at 2017 when I got nominated to travel to United States of America and represent my country at cultural exchange program for young African leaders. And during my period over there in Texas, I had the opportunity to stay with lovely, caring American family called Saunders. They introduced me to local American cuisine and culture. They treated me like their own daughters. They taught me even that the real core of traveling is not only about discovering new landscape, rather it's about discovering new faces and connecting with local on a deeper level. So when I go back home, I take a decision that I'm going to honor this experience and change thousands of people's lives, as this one family has changed my perspective for life. I started Saunders Homestay project. It's a digital marketplace for short hosted accommodation with clear vision to help female-headed households to grow a source of passive income while fostering a new kind of inclusive, sustainable pattern of tourism here in Sudan. This home share style has three economic benefits. It has positive impact on residents and households, on local businesses, also over the tourism industry as a whole. We had one bright example, a woman from Eastern Sudan. After she joined Saunders Homestay, we help her to manage a comfortable room for 2 people, and we provide her with customer care and customer guidelines. So now she's able to host tourists and international students from all around the world and no longer ask her relative for financial aid. And now she could educate her child in a better school and have raised her income level or living standard. This is all as a passive income, not as primary job for her. So after COVID-19 and has hit all the global, we get affected by the travel restrictions. So we start to focus more on local travelers inside Sudan. So instead of someone traveling from one state to another, instead of staying in hotel, why not to stay with Saunders Homestay project? This has helped us to get our work not stop but continue even when the COVID-19 hit us. We also released hashtag Host a Hero for doctors and nurses to be hosted by local families whose her homes and houses near the hospital. We got nice engagement and we host many doctors and healthcare providers. Also, what I like it more about Saunders is that we can reframe the challenges that face our society and we can help this with this same project. So now in our homes and houses near the hospital, we got nice engagement and we host many doctors and healthcare providers. Also, what I like it more about Saunders is that we can reframe the challenges that face our society and we can help this with this same project. So now, in the past couple weeks, we had severe floods here in Sudan after the Nile River has reached its highest level since many years. We released hashtag of Be Their Home for people to host other affected people from floods who lost their homes and get affected. We also get nice engagement, and we had able to host many people. One last thing I just want to say about it is my favorite quote. It's a traveling is the only thing that makes you richer, and I get no places like Homestay. Thanks, Gina, for giving me this opportunity to make my voice heard and to share Sander Homestead as well. Story with other people. I hope I could be like inspiring or source of inspiration for other people to start such a new project in their environment and start to make the change or be the change they want to see in the world. Thanks, Gina.
Fantastic. Let's hear then. Let's move a little bit across the world over to Manila and hear from you, Rex. I'd like to hear again, what kind of grassroots innovations are you finding in the Philippines, and why do they matter for sustainable development?
Yes, please allow me to frame my answer in the context of the solutions mapping methodology of the Accelerator Lab and our work on inclusive innovation in the Philippines and promoting inclusive innovation in the Philippines. We have actually contextualized the solutions mapping methodology in the Philippine setting, in the Filipino setting. And what we've done is that we kind of like incorporated elements of being youthful and playful and adventurous in the whole process in itself. A lot of Filipinos right now love to travel, love to explore the Philippines, and we would like to be able to tap into that persona as we try to encourage solutions mapping and support for inclusive innovation in the Philippines. We call it salik-lakbay. It's a combination of two Filipino words, which is saliksik, which means to research, and lakbay, which is to journey. So it's actually more of like a research journey, an adventure of sorts, like a field trip where people go out and find and connect with innovators, grassroots innovators, and find solutions wherever they are. So the idea is to be able to integrate that into the culture, the Filipino youth culture in the Philippines. And we have actually prototyped the Salik Lakbay in two settings, and these are actually two jungle settings. The first jungle setting is the urban jungle of Manila, in one of the oldest commercial centers. It dates back to as much as 400 years. It's been there for the longest time. And the second one is the lush jungle in the mountains of Mount Hamiguitan in Davao Oriental in the southern part of the Philippines. I'd like to show a couple of pictures here. The first picture, the first slide that I'd like to show you is actually a photo of the hackers in Quiapo, Manila. And what they do is that they cannibalize electronic parts. They put them together to invent something new. I've seen one who actually created a 1 peso or a single coin vending machine type to be able to peddle wireless access. So imagine, making wireless access in a sachet form, but also at the same time, it presents the kind of poverty that we have in the Philippines. It's a problem that is not that is yet that surfaced because of the solution that we found. Moving on to the second picture, features a Nanay Dalipe. Nanay means mother. She is the tribal herbalist and healer of the Mandaya Mansaka tribe of Mount Hamiguitan in Davao Oriental. Everyone calls her Nanay, right? Or mother. Because at the end of the day, when you're sick, when the doctor is 20 kilometers away, the closest thing you have is a tribal healer. So she's done a lot of things in the community promoting indigenous crafts, heirloom recipes, and most especially ethnobotanicals. And this is especially interesting, especially in COVID-19, because they've been claiming that there are herbs in the community that they've been using for the longest time, since generations. They couldn't remember how it came to be, that they're using it to heal, right? So this is interesting because, you know, there might be some compound there that can be discovered, and that's why we're partnering also with the Department of Science and Technology to be able to map these ethnobotanicals and see what's that active ingredient there. And other than that, also at the same time, the heirloom recipes and the weaves and the patterns and the process on how they're doing this particular indigenous crafts. And connecting it with the question in the SDGs by mapping them and surfacing their solutions, we are actually providing an opportunity for the grassroots innovator to connect to the market, right? So this is an opportunity for them to show other people that, you know, these are wonderful crafts that you know, that can be sold in the market or perhaps exported, you know, and can support the community as well in the future. This also ensures that credit is given to where it is due. We don't want to be in a situation where when a designer suddenly applies for a patent for a certain weave or a process that is derived from indigenous cultures, and suddenly they're not allowed to do that because of the intellectual property constraints. So we don't want that. So we have to be able to acknowledge them as well. And last but not the least, these grassroots innovators are mavens and connectors in the community. They're actually the wellspring of wisdom and of connecting with the whole community as well. And by encouraging them, by enabling them, we'd be able to enable the whole community as well. So it actually supports SDGs number 1, which is no poverty, by connecting them to the market and reducing inequality as well. And most specifically on ensuring that there's sustainable cities and communities in all over the Philippines, like not just in the Philippines, but all over the world. And last but not the least, as mentioned by Fatima a while ago, it's climate, right? It's climate action. We're looking at the diversity of plants, flora and fauna in the community. If we are able to find that these ethnobotanicals are going to be good for the health in the future, perhaps that would encourage the government to support the whole community and protect the environment as well. And by supporting also these grassroots innovators that hacks these electronic parts, we're also at the same time encouraging people to be mindful of the waste that they're producing in the community. So yeah, thank you.
Fantastic, thanks guys. So I think we have a sense now, you know, from what you have told us on a little bit, the kinds of innovations we're talking about here. Reducing the drudgery of manual labor, turning waste plastic into value by mixing it with sand or sawdust, peddling around wireless access. This is, when we talk about grassroots innovations, these are the kinds of things we're talking about. And it sounds to me that it matters for sustainable development because of the frugality of the materials that are used, the ingenuity really of people who are, as a professor, as you said, too impatient to wait for solutions to come from the outside. And very much if we think about sustainable development as trying to balance economic growth, environmental protection, and social inclusion, a lot of these grassroots innovation have that ingredient from the start. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. There's a higher likelihood, maybe, is what we're finding as we experiment in this area. I want to shift us now to thinking about, okay, we understand they're important in their own right, and we understand they're important for sustainable development. Now, what do we do with them? So let me shift to you, Professor. What do we do once we find these grassroots innovations?
When we have innovations, whether in Philippines, Ghana, or Sudan, or wherever, there is a challenge that policymakers says, well, it's okay. You have solved a problem in a community. Now I have to deal with the problems of the whole country. And how would I do that? That's a very genuine question that a policymaker asks. So the first slide that shows you that, as the Honeybee Network tried to do, one of the goals of the policymaker is to give voice, visibility, and velocity to the ideas of common people. So how do you give voice? Naturally, in the educational content, you can incorporate the lessons of the grassroots innovations. You can use them, you can organize exhibitions. Many Innovation Acceleration Labs organized innovation fairs where policymakers can come and see how people are trying to solve. You can give velocity, which means you can make an ecosystem by which these innovations will diffuse faster. The second slide shows you that there is a pond where we have many swans. They're all moving in one direction, but the innovator, the oddball is moving in a different direction. And please remember that most innovators are bucking the trend. They're not following the trend. So the policymakers must create differentiation, create spaces for these solutions to exist, and for which you need to create exceptions. In other words, we cannot allow a very bureaucratic system with uniform rules and regulations to apply to an innovation ecosystem, because innovators are asking for more freedom, more flexibility.
Can you give us an example of how that would work? How a policymaker could make space for the oddballs?
Well, please look at this way, that there's an innovator who has developed a solution for, let's say, multi-purpose food processing I mentioned earlier. Now, if you look at the rules, and if they require that the innovators must provide, like in any other borrower from a bank, a collateral, a property to be securing the loan, and that innovator may have no property, no collateral, then you have to make an exception. You have to say that if you want to promote innovations, not only that I will give you loan without any security, but I will also give you some grant so that you can go and create capacity among the communities to absorb the innovation. So the innovator is doing two functions now. One, he would provide the solution to the community. Second, he's increasing their capacity to use the solution, because just by providing an answer, by providing an artifact, people can't use it. People have never used this before. So you need to build capacity. As the third slide shows, that you have a triangle of innovation, investment, enterprise. You know, when we set up network, after that we set up Srishti, which was an NGO. Then we set up GAN, which was a semi-autonomous organization in partnership with government, state government. So 3 secretaries, agriculture, industry, rural development were on the board. 3 professors were on the board. 3 voluntary organizations were on the board. 3 corporate chiefs were on the board. This is the board of GAN. So policymakers must create such boards of the ecosystem institutions that bring the best of the civil society, that bring best of the bureaucracy, that bring best of the academia and best of the corporation. All the 4 stakeholders are brought together in the governance of the ecosystem. And this triangle shows that innovation, investment, and enterprise, these are the 3 cardinal vectors by which an ecosystem is made holistic, made sustainable. If one of them is missing, you have innovation but no investment, or you have investment but no entrepreneur to take it forward, things will not change. Now, we must remember that not all enterprises are market driven. We must also have social enterprises. We must also have do-it-yourself social technologies that can be diffused by making them open access. No restrictions, no property right on that. So we must create a very wide range of governance routes by which these solutions can become accessible to people, from intellectual property protected to completely open for anybody to use and copy and adapt for their local needs. So we need to create that ecosystem. Finally, even among the financial instruments, we should remember that if there's a risk capital which made the information technology revolution possible, which made the biotechnology revolution possible, we also need just like a microfinance was for goods and services for which market exists, we have to create micro venture finance for goods and services for which market does not yet exist. Risk capital. Because most innovators cannot be sure that their solutions will always work in the way they had anticipated. They are taking risk. They are disrupting the system. They are disrupting the inertia. So we must provide them a combination of grant, risk capital, loan, and various other instruments. So policymakers have to create an ecosystem which makes it attractive. Let me conclude with an example of COVID-19. In COVID-19, we had a major problem of educating people. And to educate young people, we were trying to use online tools. But there are a lot of people who don't have smartphone, who don't have access to internet. How would we include them? So there were grassroots innovators. A teacher, Ashok Bhai, tried to use a cable TV system. Cable TV is much more accessible than smartphone. And smartphone is an individual. Cable TV, whole family looks at it. There are 3 children, they have to educate. So cable TV operation was used. Somebody used loudspeaker. Somebody used some other methods. So what I'm trying to say that during COVID-19, we saw that grassroots innovations could bring more inclusive approach to learning, more inclusive approach to education. And that demonstrates that even in the case of emergency, when their time is not much and problems have to be solved in real time, grassroots innovators can come out with solutions. Now, challenge before the policymaker is to call a meeting of all the cable operators, cable TV operators, and request them to provide some time for communication of educational content for the children, so that the poor children don't remain outside the system of inclusive development. Similarly, youth empowerment. How do we empower the youth and generate employment for them, which is one of the major goals for UNDP to pursue in the future? Now there, unless I know what innovations have been done, how will I articulate my desire to set up an enterprise? So creating awareness about this is another way in which policymakers can make a big difference.
There's so much we can learn, just like from Mahasin. I know that UNDP in Sudan is very much learning from her work to say, when we make youth unemployment investments, we need to see what people are doing, what young people are doing for themselves, with themselves, and to adapt to that rather than prescribing for them. I want to shift now to Fatima to hear a little bit about how you are connecting this informal network of waste management innovators to the policy framework. This seems to me 2 worlds that often wouldn't meet each other. I wonder what you're doing to connect them.
So initially, we went to the Ministry of Environment. Luckily, the UNDP country office here has a good relationship with the deputy minister. And so we went out there, and I said to him, but you can't understand this without coming into the field with me. So we took the deputy minister on a visit, on an ethnographic trip out into the field to actually see for himself the amount of work that was being done. And he was blown away by the tons of plastic being recycled. And yes, you know, I am not going to romanticize it, not ideal working conditions, but introducing the policymakers, getting them to actually see firsthand what's happening is informing the current conversation on the National Plastic Action Policy Network here in Ghana on how to bring the informal into the policy making. Basically, there has to be room crafted aside for these people who are not formally educated, but they're really feeding formal enterprises with the amount of work that they're doing. So that's one angle that we've done. The second thing was to get the local city authorities here in Accra to decriminalize the activities of waste collectors in certain parts of the city, and to recognize that the amount of waste being collected by these people is actually keeping them out of landfill sites and out of the ocean and contributing to sustainability. So there's conversation. I'm very happy that we've gotten the country office involved, the programming units involved, and the conversation around how do we get government and the city authorities to really take note of the amount of work being done by these innovators and to recognize them and to build safe and safe working environments for them, and to also make it easier if there's any ways that the laws would acknowledge them and ease the amount of hassle that people go through on a daily basis, make their work safer. I can say that just yesterday, the UNDP country office held a training session in collaboration with the Accra Metropolitan Authority on safer working conditions for plastic workers, especially in this post-COVID era. Thank you.
Fantastic. I mean, one of the things I love about this job that I'm holding right now is it's such a recognition that a global development organization like UNDP with, a $5 billion budget annually has recognized it needs to learn from the women and men that you're talking about, right? Who we either see sometimes, hopefully with empathy, but rarely do we understand the inventions and the ingenuity and the brilliance coming from them. I know, Rex, I know you did a similar exercise where you took some municipal partners out on the road on a solution safari. I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about that, those worlds colliding.
Yes, we actually have successfully partnered with the Department of Science and Technology in mapping grassroots innovation, and it has become some sort of a new tool for policymakers in the Philippines to use it in a way for them to gain empathy with the researchers and with the grassroots innovators that they usually in a usual academic and scientific setting they would not welcome. Right, so it was an opportunity for them to see that firsthand in a public market, and recently, just 2 weeks ago, in Mount Hamiguitan in an indigenous community in Davao Oriental. So that sort of like opened this opportunity for them to see innovation in a different light. For academics and scientists, there's a whole rigorous process that they follow, but upon seeing this type of innovations that they see, they realize that, hey, the process that they've done and the iterative and experimental approach that they have actually incorporated in the whole process is actually telling these researchers and scientists that, these people actually have some kind of rigor that they are following. The only different thing is it's not documented, right? And they have a specific kind of mindset and process where they're following. And in my experience of Salik Lakbay and brushing shoulders with these grassroots innovators, is that they're the ones who would, in terms of process, find that fastest possible way to reach the goal with the least amount of resources that's going to be used. Because considering that they are in a they're in a bind, really. They don't have enough they don't have enough money, they don't have enough resources, and they make do with what they have. And this is what Professor Anil has mentioned about frugal innovation, and by connecting these grassroots innovators with the policymakers, it allows them to see that different angle as it is. And this is exactly the objective on why we are approaching the conversation of inclusive innovation in the country. Is we would like to elevate that conversation to make sure that innovation is not only centered on innovative startups or entrepreneurs, but also at the same time looks at the beneficiaries, that these beneficiaries, the poor, grassroots innovators are not the recipients, but they actually have this opportunity to also help themselves and help others. So by broadening the conversation in terms of in the benefits and who provides the kind of innovations in the community, we would be able to acknowledge these people and thereby empower them as well to become better, to enhance themselves, and providing that support also to the government or policymakers for them to enable these innovators through the support of an ecosystem for them to thrive.
Exactly. I think we all have a kind of visceral understanding of what that means now that that we are going through the COVID-19 pandemic. We haven't finished it yet. We see the fast pace of change, the fact that there isn't a vaccine, isn't a treatment, isn't the availability of personal protective equipment that we would want, and the supply chains broke down. This power of bottom-up innovations we've seen everywhere, right? From homemade masks to 3D printed face shields to, it goes on and on. And I hope we're getting to a point where we understand that our role as a global development community is sometimes to build upon that, rather than supplying all the solutions and the ideas and, you know, importing from the outside, as it were. It's a very different role, and we'll have to explore how it goes. So thank you all so much today for this conversation. I think we've seen some of the power of grassroots innovation. We've seen they're integrated from the start. They don't need a special strategy to work on integrated sustainable development, so that's incredible. They're frugal. We're giving credit where credit is due. And importantly, we've seen that this idea of an ecosystem is critical. Connecting innovators to each other, connecting innovators to policy conversations, connecting, of course, innovators to investment and risk capital is critical. So let me just end by thanking you all so much. Thank you, Professor Gupta. Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Mahasin, for sharing your experiences. And as a call to action, since we are in the Sustainable Development Goal Action Zone, let me just say that if you are an innovator out there, we are working together with Hyundai Motor Company to develop a platform where all innovators can share their prototypes, their rough sketches of work that's underway to advance sustainable development. So if you go to fortomorrow.org, we're building the platform now. You can engage in early action there to share your innovations. We will, of course, tap into the UNDP Accelerator Lab network of 90 solution mappers around the world and their partners that they work with, which amplifies this all the more. And we will start to build this ecosystem where we can learn to see these grassroots innovations for the value they contain. So huge thanks to all of you, and please do go to fortomorrow.org if you want to learn more about the UNDP Accelerator Lab network and the work we're doing with the Honeybee network to systematize learning to see grassroots innovations. Go to undpacceleratorlabs.org, and thank you so much, everyone, for the dialogue today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wow.